News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at today's headlines. Wall Street takes a nosedive yet again, this after market heavyweight Apple slashes its sales estimates, blaming economic weakness in China caused by Beijing's trade war with the US. Another high-profile defection, it seems, in what could deal a massive blow to the regime. South Korean intelligence confirms North Korea's top diplomat in Rome has gone into hiding. Plus, Nancy Pelosi declares a new dawn in US Congress as the Democrats take control of the House. So let's start off by taking a look at how the stocks are doing, and it isn't a particularly pretty picture at the moment. The Korean stock market opened amid a plunge in share prices in the US and other major markets around the world over the lower than expected sales by Apple and concerns about a slowing global economy. We do have our economics correspondent Kim Jaein joining us on the line. So, Jaein, let's start with the benchmark Kospi here in Korea.
Sure, Mark. According to the Korea Exchange, the nation's benchmark Kospi started early, trading slightly lower than the previous session at 1992 on Friday. This comes after it closed below the psychologically important 2,000 mark the previous day, to the lowest level in more than 2 years, as investor confidence waned due to concerns of a slowing global economy. Institutions had sold nearly $150 million worth of Kospi shares in a single day on Thursday. The tech-heavy Kospi also started 0.2% lower than yesterday's, closing at the 655 level on Friday. In response, senior officials of the Bank of Korea held a meeting to monitor the situation to discuss countermeasures following big declines in stock markets in the U.S. and other major countries. Wall Street had tumbled Thursday on U.S. tech giant Apple's profit warning, which has sent shockwaves across global markets. The Dow Jones Index closed 2.8% to 22,685. while the S&P 500 lost 2.5% to 2,448. The tech-heavy NASDAQ also plunged 3% to 6,464. Apple stock plunged nearly 10% to $142, its biggest single-day drop in 6 years. Its chief executive Tim Cook warned the company's first quarter revenue of the fiscal year would be about 10% lower than expected at $84 billion. He blamed the slowing economy in China for the weaker sales figures, and with this, pundits went on to say that the U.S.-China trade war and the billions of dollars in tariffs they had imposed on each other during the latter half of last year has affected Apple's business. Weaker than expected U.S. manufacturing figures also exacerbated market anxiety. A report from the Institute for Supply Management shows the U.S. has suffered the biggest drop since 2008, the height of the financial crisis. And the International Monetary Fund has already forecast that China is set to record the slowest growth rate in 28 years in 2018 with 6.6%. Officials from China and the U.S. are reportedly planning to hold meetings to hammer out a deal on trade next month, in January actually, to try to turn the current trade truce into something more permanent before the deadline in March. Mark?
Thank you very much, Jaein, for that report, and let's hope it isn't a repeat of 2008, 2009. That's certainly not something we want to see, but we'll keep a close eye on the markets for you. Now, in other news, a senior North Korean diplomat who was working for Pyongyang's embassy in Italy is reportedly seeking asylum and is under protection of the authorities in Italy. Jung-ju reports.
A senior North Korean diplomat in Italy disappeared from the mission last year and is reportedly seeking asylum. On Thursday, South Korean newspaper 중앙일보 reported, citing diplomatic sources, that Cho Sung-gil, the chargé d'affaires of the North's embassy in Rome, applied for personal security protection from the Italian government early December. He and his family are currently under the protection of Italian authorities. Personal security protection is a diplomatic procedure aimed to prevent one being repatriated while seeking asylum in a third country. Throughout the day, the South Korean government declined to confirm the matter, saying they have no information regarding the report. But the nation's intelligence agency briefed lawmakers on the situation on Thursday. Accordingly, lawmakers said that Cho disappeared with his wife from embassy grounds in early November last year before he was due to finish his term later that month. It is not yet clear whether Cho is hoping to defect to South Korea. Seoul's intelligence agency told lawmakers that there has been no attempt to contact the government by Cho, while his whereabouts are yet to be confirmed. Cho was dispatched to Italy in May 2015 and started to run the North Korean mission there in October 2017 as the Italian government expelled the North's ambassador Moon Jung-nam after Pyongyang's 6th nuclear test. It's believed that Cho decided to seek asylum after he was ordered to return home. A major reason is deemed to be the education of his children. There have been 2 senior North Korean diplomats who sought asylum in a third country. A former minister at the North's embassy in London, Tae Young-ho, defected to South Korea in 2016. And back in 1997, former North Korean ambassador to Egypt, Chang Seung-gil, defected to the U.S. with his family and his brother, who served as Pyongyang's trade representative in Paris. 오정희, Arirang News.
Now, with Kim Jong-un's New Year's address and his letter to President Trump, a second summit between the leaders of North Korea and the United States appears to be on the cards now. It is certainly a positive sign after months of stalled nuclear negotiations between the two sides. Park Hee-jun reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump both say they are ready for a second summit.
나는 앞으로도 언제든 또다시 미국 대통령과 마주 앉을 준비가 되어 있으며 반드시 국제사회가 환영하는 결과를 만들기 위해 노력할 것입니다.
We had our meeting 6 months ago in Singapore. We'll probably now have another meeting. He'd like to meet. I like to meet.
The U.S. has been hoping to hold the second Kim-Trump meeting early this year. And with the two leaders having set the stage for a second summit, there is a higher possibility of it actually happening. But it depends largely on how flexible Washington is willing to be over its past demands. Because in Kim's New Year's speech, he made it clear that he wants the nuclear negotiations to center on limiting North Korea's future nuclear capabilities, not its existing nuclear weapons.
Then North Korea is not interested in talking about its nuclear weapons. One bright side of the New Year's address is that it might be easier for them to start the negotiation, focusing more on the future capabilities, such as freezing the capabilities and facilities of North Korea. So maybe President Trump and the Chairman Kim might be able to reach an interim agreement before FFBD, which is about freezing and limiting the current capability of North Korea's nuclear weapons.
That will determine whether or not there will be high-level or working-level talks between the two sides that could lead to a second summit. And even when that's settled, there's still the question of lifting sanctions on the North. It's a long road ahead before the two leaders actually meet face-to-face, but experts say it's a positive turn that could lead to progress in these style negotiations. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Now, some of the leading figures in South Korea's economy and finance sectors got together on Thursday for an annual event here in Seoul. They called on bigger businesses to lend a helping hand to smaller up-and-coming firms and for the swift removal of red tape that hampers innovation in South Korea, according to them anyway. Kim Hae-sung reports.
Innovation and risk management in the finance sector. These are the keywords that Korea's key economic policymakers pointed to at a New Year gathering with 1,100 leaders from the finance industry, including banks and insurance companies. Minister of Economy and Finance Hong Nam-gi emphasized the role of Korea's banks in supporting startups to help boost innovation. The chairman of the Financial Services Commission, Jung-ju, said he'll help accelerate innovation in the financial sector through deregulation. And he added that through funding, he'll help boost the competitiveness of Korea's key manufacturing industries. The chief of the Korea Federation of Banks, Kim Tae-young, called for Korean banks to go digital and go global to lead the fourth industrial revolution. But some other policymakers put more emphasis on risk management. Both the Bank of Korea chief Lee Ju-yeol and Financial Supervisory Service chief Yoon Seok-kun said Korea faces challenges like growing household debt, slowing global economy, and the U.S.-China trade war. Banks, they said, need to manage such risks preemptively, enhance their fiscal soundness, and distribute resources effectively and productively. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Now let's turn to the Moon Jae-in administration's efforts to revitalize the South Korean economy. President Moon's chief of staff for economic policy, he met with members of the country's top conglomerates on Thursday in a bid to join forces and hopefully turn things around a bit after what was generally a 2018 to forget in economic terms, plus in a sign of just how seriously the government is taking this issue. The president himself, President Moon Jae-in, is set to meet with some of these business bigwigs soon as well. Shin Se-min reports.
President Moon Jae-in will be meeting this month with the nation's business leaders, including the heads of big conglomerates and the owners of small and medium-sized enterprises. The first, with SME owners and the self-employed, is scheduled for January 7th, and the second, with the heads of conglomerates, is expected to be held sometime in the middle of the month. The presidential spokesperson says the purpose of the meetings is to revitalize economic growth, to give companies a foundation for investment, and to draw positive outcomes from policies. On top of the president's own meetings, others at the presidential office are also keeping in close touch with the country's biggest business groups. On Thursday, the presidential chief of staff for economic policy, Kim Soo-hyun, held a closed-door meeting with senior executives from the country's top conglomerates, following up on a meeting late last month between the deputy advisory panel and executives from the business groups including Samsung, LG, and SK. The so-called chaebol, or family-run conglomerates, have massive influence in the market, which will be important in achieving the policy outcomes the president has promised for the new year.
2019년 정책의 성과들을 국민들께서 삶 속에서 확실히 체감할 수 있도록 최선을 다하겠습니다. 기업이 투자에 적극적으로 나설 수 있도록 정부가 지원하겠습니다.
Despite the administration lending business an ear, there are still calls for concrete action to come out of these meetings, with some suggesting corporate tax cuts. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, entering the third year of Moon Jae-in's presidency, South Korea's top office is looking at a potential reshuffle of its backroom staff and presidential aides as early as next week. Sources familiar with the matter say the verification process for possible replacements has been in the works since late last year. The reshuffle is expected to swap out current presidential aides who plan on running for the ruling party in next year's general elections. The sources say the shake-up could see President Moon's chief of staff, Im Jong-sok, leaving his role. Today is the first day of the new and most diverse U.S. Congress scene in America's history. However, it's also day 13 of the government shutdown, almost 2 full weeks now. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Aram. So, Aram, Democrats have control of the House, and it appears they're wasting little time to flex their newly found political muscle to try, at least, to end this shutdown.
That's right, Mark. The Democrats have gotten straight to business, preparing to pass legislation that would end the shutdown without giving President Trump funding for his border wall. The 116th Congress convened Thursday with roughly a quarter of the federal government closed, which has affected 800,000 employees. Democratic lawmaker Nancy Pelosi has reclaimed the Speaker's gavel. She called the House to order and said legislation would be proposed that aims to break the impasse.
I'm particularly proud to be the woman Speaker of the House of this Congress, which marks the 100th year of women having the right to vote. We will debate and advance good ideas no matter where they come from. And in that spirit, Democrats will be offering the Senate Republican appropriations legislation to reopen government later today.
One of the proposed bills does include funding for border security, but the amount is nowhere near the $5 billion demanded by President Trump. Trump and Republican senators have dismissed the proposed bills, accusing the Democrats of playing politics. Tens of thousands of people have fled islands off Thailand's southeast coast to escape what could be the most devastating storm to hit in decades. Tropical Storm Pabuk is expected to make landfall on Friday evening, local time, bringing heavy rain, strong winds and 7-meter waves. However, it's unlikely to become a typhoon. A weather warning has been issued, but no evacuation order is in place. Officials have set up shelters for those who wish to stay put. A Chinese probe has made history by landing on the far side of the moon. The Chang'e 4 was launched early last month and took 3 days to get to the moon, but it has spent the last few weeks orbiting it in preparation to touch down on the surface. The far side of the moon has been mapped before, but the Chinese vessel is the first to touch down there. It'll take detailed measurements of the moon's terrain and mineral composition. The landing comes about 2 years after the successful Chang'e 3 mission, the first soft landing on the moon since 1976. Apple says it's halting sales of its iPhone 7 and 8 in Germany during a patent fight with chipmaker Qualcomm. Qualcomm, meanwhile, says it has posted security bonds on $1.5 billion to enforce a court order banning the sale of those models. The ruling came last month after a Munich court found that iPhone maker infringed Qualcomm's power-saving technology used in smartphones. Apple says it's appealing the decision.
Thank you as always to Arirang for the world news there. Now, South Korea saw a fresh high in its foreign exchange reserves for the month of December. According to the Bank of Korea on Friday, FX reserves amounted to just under $403.7 billion, up $710 million from the previous month. This is the highest figure since September 2018. The Bank of Korea attributed the increase to a weaker greenback, which in turn means an increase in the value of other currencies when converted into dollars. In general, foreign exchange reserves are held to back up the national currency in case of a devaluation. As of the end of November, South Korea had the 8th biggest FX reserves in the world. The country with the most was China. A new survey shows 1 in 5 elderly people in South Korea are socially inactive. It goes without saying that they are much more prone to isolation and loneliness. In response, the government has revealed a blueprint that centres on providing hundreds of thousands of jobs for senior citizens in 2019, just so they can make some money and interact with other people. Our Won Jung-hwan reports.
Last year, South Koreans 65 and older accounted for more than 14% of the country's total population. And by 2025, that could rise to 20%. The fast-growing number of senior citizens poses a range of social issues, so the government is looking to provide more jobs for them. The Ministry of Health and Welfare said Thursday that it plans to create 610,000 jobs for seniors this year, 100,000 more than last year. It said it will try to help each senior citizen find a decent position through a customized service with monthly pay ranging between around $88 and $1,200, depending on the position. But with demand for jobs high among seniors, the ministry recommended that they apply for the program as soon as possible because it expects the hiring period will end much more quickly than last year. The government has already been working to provide more income to the elderly and to raise their living standards, but the working system will bring them even more benefits. The Welfare Ministry explained that by giving them jobs, elderly people who are socially isolated will be at less risk of mental health issues such as loneliness, which has been a major cause of suicide among older people. 원종환, 아리랑 뉴스.
The founder of South Korea's biggest online game publisher, Nexen Corporation, is set to sell a controlling stake in the firm's holding company. Sources say Kim Jung-ju is offering a combined 98.64% stake worth roughly $5.3 billion in Nexen's holding firm. While Kim has reportedly been unhappy with regulatory restrictions on game firms here in Korea, the company denies that's the reason behind the sell-off. Industry watchers say potential buyers include China's Tencent and US video game company Electronic Arts. Now, the new year is kicking off with one of the most fascinating celestial shows that can be seen with the human eye, namely a meteor shower. Unfortunately, for most of our international viewers, it won't be visible in some parts of the world. However, those of us here in Korea should be able to get a decent view of it, not only on Friday night, but on Saturday night as well. Jaein reports.
As the Earth revolves around the sun, it passes through streams of cosmic debris. And if you're lucky enough, you might be able to catch the result: colorful meteor showers that light up the night sky. If you're in Korea, meteor showers will brighten the night skies for around 48 hours starting Friday night. This meteor shower will be all the more special as it's known as quadranteds. Compared with most other meteor showers, these are unusual, as they are thought to have originated from a passing asteroid. Although they tend to be fainter with fewer streaks in the sky, the moonless night sky should help people view the phenomenon.
You'll be able to see about 2 showers a minute, but that's during ideal conditions. To see more meteors, it's best to go to a place without much light pollution.
Experts say it's best to use your naked eye to watch the meteor shower, as binoculars and telescopes tend to limit your field of view. Finding a location that has a clear view of the entire night sky is key. Ideally, somewhere with dark skies away from city lights and traffic. 이승재, 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning. Temperatures will surge above the seasonal average this Friday, the mercury rising slightly higher than it did on Thursday. But readings will fall once again over the weekend. And those of us in the central regions will need to brace for some toxic smog. Regions in the west, including Seoul, could see bad air all day today. And what's worse, microfine dust levels will be high. So we'll need face masks and scarves to protect ourselves from the cocktail of dust and smog. And the dust will actually get worse in the evening. So those planning to check out tonight's meteor shower will need to have face masks with you. But the air quality should improve by tomorrow. Skies will be fairly clear throughout the day and into the night in most areas, except on Jeju Island, with light rain in the forecast in the evening. And daily highs will be a tad higher than yesterday in Seoul, getting up to 4 degrees Celsius. Southern provinces will see temperatures similar to yesterday. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's where we're going to leave it for now on this Friday morning here in Seoul. Do stay tuned to us on Arirang TV. And a reminder that we'll have our next newscast at noon Korea time in around an hour and a half from now. So until then, goodbye.
네, 아리랑 TV 시청자 여러분, 새해 복 많이 받으세요. 여러분 드디어 새해가 밝았습니다.
벌써 2019년 새해가 밝았습니다, 여러분.